Hi, I'm Jean Nolte, editor at Fons & Porter.
And I'm Colleen Tauke, the sewing specialist at Fons & Porter. In this tutorial, we will show you how to construct the to-the-core quilt.
This is a fun, it's basically a charm quilt. It uses one shape for the whole quilt, and it's what we call an apple core. And we're going to use a special template to cut it. So you start out, you'll need 99 10-inch squares.
A lot of 10-inch squares.
That's a lot of 10-inch squares. So the first thing we're going to do is cut all of our apple core pieces. Like I said, we have a special template to do this, and it's called an apple core template.
As you can look at it, it looks kind of like an apple that's been eaten away on the sides.
So what we're going to do is from each 10-inch square, we're going to cut one apple core. So I'm going to just cut one side and the top.
Jean's using a smaller rotary blade, as you'll notice. A lot of times we're using the 45 wide blade. We're using a smaller one because that inside curve of the template is a little easier to bring that smaller blade right up to it and get a nice clean cut.
All right. So then I rotated my mat.
And a lot of times we've purchased those rotating mats. We've used them for a few projects and put them away. Here's a good place so that you're always going to cut away from your body in the safest position. So
I didn't stay snugged up next to the template there, so I'm going to make a little extra cut. So that's fine.
Yep.
Better to have too much than not enough. Now you need 99 of these, but also out of 20 of the squares, got one
Make sure you overlap your corners.
One little thread
Overcut your corners just a little bit. That makes a nice clean cut.
Okay, so out of 20 of the pieces that are left over, we're going to cut fill-in pieces, and you can see there's a line here that you'll put. I like it just inside those little tips that stick out.
And pre-cuts, you've got kind of a pinked edge, and on some of the different companies that produce them, so you want to make sure you have a good, your template is all the way onto your fabric. These are the fill-in pieces that are going to be on the outer edge of the quilt. So as you look at it, you see all those apple cores that fit together back and forth, but the outer edge, we've created a straight line around our quilt instead of trying to figure out what to do with the curve. And those fill-ins are going to be those little pieces that we're going to make a nice straight line on the edge of our quilts.
All right, so once you've cut all your pieces, we need to mark the centers. So we're going to turn this upside down, and you can see that on our template, we've gone in with a permanent marker like a Sharpie and marked the centers. So I'm going to take the template and put it back on top of there.
Find something that will make it very visible so you can tell where the center is as you mark them.
You could even use a Sharpie if you keep it in that.
That might be a little dangerous.
If you keep it inside that
seam allowance.
Seam allowance, but if you get too long a mark, you're going to have it on the right side of your quilt. So
we're going to say the nasty word curved seam. But if you'll notice, these curves are more gentle, so that makes them a little bit easier to piece.
Right. Now I have some that are already marked here. So there's one that has all the markings, and here's another one. So we're going to join these two together.
Okay. So what we want to do is create interlocked pieces. So some apple cores are going to be laying down, some are going to be standing up. And I need to put together this curve right here. And you think, how am I going to put that together? What we need to do is always work with what I call the smile. This piece that looks like your smile, put it on top. And what we're going to do is we're going to match up those two marks that we found as our centers. So pencil and slide, get them matched up one over the top of the other. Place a pin in that spot. Just take a little bite right into the seam allowance, not a large one, just a little one.
So just barely connected.
Just want them just tethered just a little bit together. And then we're going to go to each of the outer ends. And here we're going to take a little bit bigger bite. We don't want this to slide around. So you can see I'm taking a bigger bite here. I'm going to do the same thing on the other end.
And this is a pretty gentle curve. So it's a good first curved seam project because they aren't.
You may want to practice
small,
a few blocks at first.
That's always a good idea when you're making a quilt, to make a practice block or a practice curved seam.
And now you're going to look at it and go, wow, how is all that going to fit together? There's going to be a gentle bringing together of those cut edges. So we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, 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 1/4 inch se Always making sure we're lining up the 1/4 inch outside edge there. Put it under your presser foot. Make sure you get it lined up just right. I'm going to remove that pin once I've got my presser foot in place.
It'll hold it in place for you then.
Just take a few stitches, and then patience is where this pays off. You're just going to go very few stitches at a time.
Yeah.
I like to sew faster usually, but
this is just not a fast quilt, is it?
No, this one's, it's quickly because we've got the great template for cutting everything. We've got...
Well, and the pieces are pretty large. It only has 99 of the apple core pieces, but you just can't sew.
You can't sew really fast.
Real quickly.
So we come along, remove the pins as you come to them so you don't damage the tip of your needle.
The trick is stopping with that needle down and sort of fluffing the fabric back a little bit.
Exactly.
And
you're
just
going to get a
little bit at
really
time.
pretty curve when you're done. Now, when I've taught classes of curve piecing, I've always said you do a couple practice blocks first. We call those your kindergarten blocks. You will graduate quite quickly because by the time you get to the 2nd or 3rd of your little blocks, all of a sudden they're coming out perfect every time. So take a deep breath. Remember to breathe as you piece. If you're holding your breath, you're gonna get nervous. Okay, so now look at all that fill, all that extra, but as we open it up, you're going to see a nice, gentle
And it's going to tell you that it wants to be pressed toward this, the smile.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead
Seam
and
allowance
press
goes
that.
towards the center of the apple core. Now, there are times when you get a little tuck, and you can go back with the seam ripper, lay your seams back flat, take out 2 or 3 stitches, kind of finesse it, and go back in and fix that area if you need to.
That's going to look nice. Now, this is a quilt I think you're going to need to lay out on a design wall before you start stitching to make sure you get the colors arranged like you like them.
Because if you look at the quilt behind us, you'll see that the pink and the red blocks seem to be the brighter of the colors, and they tend to jump out, so you may not want to have them all grouped in one end of the quilt or one side of the quilt. So by laying it out on a design wall, you can come up with a more even distribution of colors.
Right, so now you just would keep adding blocks and blocks and blocks. Well, that's not a good, see, this would be a bad combination.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to probably connect those.
We wouldn't want to do that. But anyway, you would make a whole row.
Just keep making rows.
And then here's a couple more rows that are already joined. So this one, if you look, is going to fit.
Look at how that fits together then.
Right in there. Now, I have a question, because I think I know the answer to this. You said you always sew with the smile on the top, but that's going to be impossible here.
Because some of the smiles look like they're upside down.
Sometimes the smiles are over here and sometimes they're over here.
Right. I did a little research. I wanted to find out if anybody actually took these and sewed all the way down. Couldn't find anybody who wanted to do that because everyone wants to have a nice gentle curve when they're done. So I found the best thing to do, though it takes a little bit of time and tenacity, is to actually sew 1 block length at a time, always sewing with a curved smile slide up.
So you would put it like this. And of course, we haven't marked all the centers here, I don't think. So, but you would go through and you would do the same thing. Pin the center and just sew this one, right? And you stop at this seam line.
At that seam line. What I would do is I came in here and I have opposing seams because you are always pressing towards the center of the apple core. You've got an opposing seam there. So I put a pin in here, did the exact same process that I did when I just put 2 pieces together, pinned the end, pinned the center, and then I would come in here and stitch this curve. Now I've got that one in place and it's stable. Now, do the same thing here.
Now, would you flip it over and do this one next, or would you do all of these?
No, I just kept going in a straight line because I didn't want to leave anybody out. No, I just went right down the line.
So then you're going to flip the whole thing over.
Again, you have opposing seams on the next block. Put a pin in there. And you're going to be sewing with this side up.
I'm going to flip that one over.
Here's your smile. So again, match the centers and stitch there. 1 curve at a time. And it's doable. You can make the entire quilt.
Okay, now there's one more little thing because we got curvy edges here.
That's right. We don't have a straight edge on the outside.
But we had...
Remember when we were cutting off those 10-inch blocks, we had what we called fill-in pieces?
So those would go in all of these.
In the smiles, we're going to fill the smiles in with the fill-in piece. The same exact process you did for the curved seamings when you put block to block comes in here. You're going to match centers, you're going to match ends, and you're going to stitch with the smile piece on the top.
Okay, so once you've gotten this attached, you're still going to have these curves, and those you just trim even with the straight edges, and they'll be
create a straight
on
line
all four sides to create all four sides, and you're ready to quilt.
It makes it easy to put the binding on. Thanks for joining us today.
To watch more of our videos, go to video.fonsandporter.com.